That is okay. Good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you for joining us today. I'm Paul Digby. I'm a client manager focused on the not-for-profit sector here in Scotland, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this cybersecurity webinar. Our aim today, with the help of our fantastic special guests, is to equip you with some of the latest insights around best practices, share some insights that have proven effective, and introduce you to some services that can help safeguard your organisations. With cyber threats becoming more and more sophisticated, it's more crucial than ever to be prepared. In 2022, over 30% of charities experienced a cyber attack, just underscoring the growing need for robust protection. We really do have a full agenda today, so if I can ask that if you have any questions, and hopefully there are questions, please just put them into the group, into the chat, and we'll try and answer them as we go. Now, before we dive into the insights from the guest speakers, I would like to quickly introduce XMA. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go through this slide in loads of detail, but XMA are one of the largest resellers in the UK. We have a huge focus on public sector. More than 95% of our business is done through public sector. We're on the vast majority of UK frameworks, and we play a key role here in Scotland. We are sole supply on the web and prop framework, which is really focused on tablets, Chromebooks, etc. We also partner with HP on the HP Direct framework. We actually help deliver all the laptops that they provide. Now, and as charities and as housing associations, you have access to that. The slide really shows just the breadth of what we do. We didn't have time to go through all of that, but I just wanted to kind of point out that as XMA, as an organisation and potentially a partner for yourselves, we do cover from devices to infrastructure, networking, managed services, and key for today, it really is all about cybersecurity. So with that, I'm excited to hand over to our first guest speaker, Gary Scobie, who will share more about insights today into cybersecurity and landscape, how it's evolving, and how you can help protect and navigate it together. Thank you. Over to you, Gary.
Okay, thank you. Let me just move the slide on.
Don't know if that was me, Gary, but
it's fine. That's great. Okay, so thanks very much for inviting me along here. My name is Gary Scobie. I'm the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for the University of Edinburgh, which basically is a way of saying that I do all things cyber security related. I've been asked to come along here today to kind of give you an overview of how I see the cyber landscape, and also cover off what I see are some of the future threats. Now, this is a massive topic, and I have 15 minutes to do so. So let's move on. Right. There we go. One thing I've found when I've put this presentation together is that the change is constant. You know, since March 2020, we have had a global pandemic. We've seen a massive increase in remote home working. We've had a cost of living crisis. We've had the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We've got conflict in the Middle East. We've seen worsening relations between the West and China. We've seen the impact of climate change. We've seen a huge increase in cyber attacks over the last 4.5 years, and also what I call hybrid warfare, where we're seeing where land wars also now have a hybrid cyber component to it, which is used for the propagation of misinformation and disinformation as part of the war effort. The UK has had 4 prime ministers in this period as well, and To top it all, we've had artificial intelligence has come up in a big way, not only in the services we're now starting to use, but also within the public conscience as well. And sometimes you think, well, why bother? We tell our staff, they need to worry about security, and they've already got enough to worry about with all this other stuff that's going on in their lives. And then we tell them about patching. And then we tell them about phishing and ransomware and malware and Internet of Things vulnerabilities. And then we tell them, you need to think about supply chain attacks and insider threats. And then we've got cloud security. I mean, we need to think about all that kind of stuff as well. So it's a huge, complex picture. And on top of that, our staff, we're trying to give them this message about being security aware, but we're seeing real world attacks happening. In my own environment, I see things like, parcel scams, which are quite simply someone's being phoned up. Apparently, a parcel has been intercepted full of money, and the scam takes place from there. We see virtual kidnapping, where some people are put under pressure to tell their families that they've actually been kidnapped and need to pay a ransom. We see accommodation scams, where people put deposits down on someone else's Airbnb. We have the charity scams, currency scams, taxi scams. Even in the last hour, I've seen an attack against an organisation on Facebook, which is using Gordon Brown's image and the university logo, and it's an advert pointing to fake courses. The idea is that students will click on these links. They will then use their university credentials, and those credentials will then be scraped for hackers to then log in as those students into our network. So we're seeing this whole kind of churn of everyday attacks against a backdrop of sort of major events that are having a focus on people's lives. And we have this challenge of then trying to to educate people and to make them more security aware when they've got all this kind of other stuff going on in their lives. Because we're also seeing this constant onslaught of emails, links and attachments. We've got even QR codes these days, which everyone is using QR codes to scan. But we're now seeing fake QR codes on parking sites, for example, which people are then taking to fake parking sites to pay. Even letters posted by mail. So, with so many major incidents and changes in the world in the last 4 to 5 years, our colleagues and our staff have got to try and make sense of all this, and against a backdrop of increasing number of cyber attacks. So it's really difficult, in terms of getting our information over and our awareness program over, and to make people understand that actually cybersecurity is important. It's important to the business. It's important to their everyday lives. The social engineering is probably what I consider to be the biggest threat that we face. Out of everything I've just said in the last 5 minutes, I still think it's the biggest threat we faced. 90% of all known attacks in the world today start with an email and someone clicking on a link. Okay, so it's not sophisticated. It is just the reality, and social engineering being the clever manipulation of the natural human tendency to trust. We are humans. We like to get on with people. We like to be nice. We like to trust. And the more that we are trying to protect and putting protections on our computer networks and our systems, the more criminals have been looking towards the more kind of psychological social engineering aspect of cyber criminality, which is why I think, today, despite everything, it is the biggest threat that we face. And on top of that, we've now got artificial intelligence. And that's added to all this threat landscape that we're seeing. And of course, criminals have not been slow to recognise the potential of AI, and they're adopting it. And we're already seeing cyber attacks based around it. Essentially, we're seeing more convincing phishing emails. It's far easier now for a cyber criminal in another part of the world to produce a phishing email that reads perfectly well in another language, for example. Target selection It's far easier to automate that through artificial intelligence and to do the groundwork in selecting targets. And we're even seeing automation of vulnerability discovery and exploit, where we're seeing generative AI going out and looking for vulnerable sites, working out what they are vulnerable to, and then producing the exploit for that particular site. So we've got all that kind of stuff going on. But for me, today, it's the propagation of disinformation and the rise of deep fakes that is actually particularly worrying in the cyber landscape today. The deep fakes aren't new, but they are becoming mainstream in popular culture. We've seen this year, and even in popular soaps in the UK, we've seen deepfake stories taking place. So it's very much now a common thing in people's minds. And this ability to be able to create narratives that didn't actually occur is a concern. And we're already seeing real-world attacks using social engineering. This year in Hong Kong, for example, there was an individual was transferred $25 million based on the say-so of his chief financial officer, and he was on a Zoom call with colleagues, and he was the only person on the call that was a real person. Everyone else was a deep fake. And apparently he'd asked for the call because he was worried about what he was being asked to do. But he was still conned. And the worry, of course, is that, with the rise of social engineering and the fact that criminals are really looking, to use social engineering in most attacks, adding deep fake technology alongside this has a major impact, I think, on what this means for our security. I'm just waiting on the slide moving, but it is not. There we go. So, deep fakes. The important thing is it's not just about videos or trying to reproduce someone to fool someone else. No, deep fakes, they can also be, it could be a website, could be an invoice, could be a message. I've even seen scammers pretending to be police in uniform in my own organisation. It could be phone calls. It's simply audio. These can all be considered deep fakes. And it can simply be an email. We can't lose sight of the fact that despite all the focus on sort of high-profile attacks, simple emails and phishing links can still be equally as deadly. So it is important to appreciate that artificial intelligence is just another cyber weapon, and deepfake technology is an aspect of that. The thing is about deepfake is that it's the misinformation, disinformation that surrounds it. It's basically striking at our core values. It's really an attack on our integrity now and our reputation, because core to your business is your data and how reliable that is. It's your facts, it's your trusted sources, it's your research, it's your knowledge. So I'm now seeing, cyber warfare moving into two distinct areas, two fronts. We've still got to protect our data and our networks and all of that kind of technology that we've always used in order to protect our computer systems. But we're also now having to protect what is core to our business or our company, because deepfake is an attack on your integrity. It's an attack on your reputation. So the business of cybersecurity has kind of morphed into this new world. It's important to challenge your third parties. Third-party suppliers. We're seeing a huge uptake in vendors adding in what they describe as AI components into their service offerings, and that's fine. But it's really important to do your due diligence here. Ask them why they chose the implementation they did. Ensure that they did their due diligence and that you're happy. What was their reasoning for this? What is their thinking? Why did they choose to use a particular instance of AI? Traditionally, in my area, we've had security checklists that we give to vendors in order for us to assess their security posture. And we've added in aspects of AI into these questionnaires now as well, because it's now becoming commonplace. And also locally, we even do an impact assessment. So we say, yeah, we are going to have some form of AI within a service offering. So what's going to be the impact of that? So it's really important to think about that and to have that up front when you're dealing with third parties. With deepfake calls, the best advice at the moment I have is to ask people to do something unpredictable. You know, at the moment with video, turning around, putting your head into profile is something that the deepfake technology isn't great at handling at the moment. It will get better, but for now, you know, eyes blinking, mouth movements, fingers can all tell or provide telltale signs that something isn't quite right. It's very difficult, you know, when you're a thumbnail. I've been on calls with people about deepfake technology who have come on at the start, put their slides up, they've got a thumbnail in the corner of them, and they've been a deepfake. And these are people that I've met in real life, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to tell the difference between what is real and what is not. So it is something that is challenging. It is something we are going to have to deal with. It's all about having multi-level authorization for your processes in your business, you know, there as well. Understand, you know, what could you be asked to do within a business, and how would you react, especially with phone calls. You know, if you get an urgent phone call and you have to do something, especially when it involves dealing with money or providing information about someone, you know, do you have code words in place? Can you verify the person that's speaking? Deep faking audio is trivial these days if you've got a sample of that person's voice. So it is important to understand that you may need something, and it sounds very old school, but actually having some form of code word or process in place for these eventualities is something which I would recommend having. And finally, you know, security is a mindset. It's all about doing the right thing regardless, you know, and unfortunately, you know, we as individuals have to do the right thing every day, and the bad guys only got to catch us out the once. But it's all about maintaining a state of readiness and accepting that you're likely going to be targeted with a scam at some point. And the important takeaway here is that even if it's a convincing scam, the criminal still has to convince you in order to interact with their scam. So it's really important to appreciate that. You still got to do something in order for that to take effect. I think it's important as well to have a no blame culture. You know, if someone makes a mistake or clicks on something, you want them to be able to have the confidence to say, look, I made a mistake, I put my hands up to it. How do we now move forward and fix that? And that's really important. You don't want staff hiding things away or pretending it didn't happen. So it's very much operate with a no blame culture, because it's far easier then to get on and fix the issue that has resulted of that scam taking place. So to conclude, you know, artificial intelligence and deepfakes can be convincing, but so can primitive looking or unsophisticated scams. Okay, so despite the rise of AI, we're not going to see a reduction in what is pretty unsophisticated attacks. These are going to continue because they do work, and so it's all going to be about verifying first and trusting second. And of course, in future, we're going to be using AI to detect deepfakes. That's already becoming an option. It's something the industry is looking at. And of course, the next challenge after that is whether we can trust our own AI in order to do the actual job of detecting it. Okay, well, thank you very much. That's all I have.
That's great. Great. Thank you very much, Gary. I'm going to now pass over to Nicholas Scullion, who's the owner of Scullion Law, to give some insights as to what's happened to his business in the past.
Thank you. Well, first of all, can you hear me, Paul? Can everybody hear what I'm saying? Yes, we can. That's
Yes.
cool. Nice and easy, right? Gary, can I just say that was a really informative talk? And this is the sort of stuff that I was invited to in the past and often thought, well, I'll go to it in the future, but it's probably never going to happen to me. So I'll park it to the next time. So, first of all, I just want to say to everybody who's actually made the effort to come along and listen to these talks, because the stuff Gary was talking about there is actually really, really important. So, and the most important thing I think I'll just put out straight in there is this establishment of a no blame culture. You know, it's so easy to fall victim of a cyber hack or any sort of cyber crime these days. I think the critical thing for all of us is to give ourselves a bit of a break and understand that it's probably going to happen. So there are things that you and your team are going to do which may give rise to vulnerability. And so if you have a culture of blame, then people aren't going to share that with you and you're not going to get anywhere, to be quite frank with you. So a little bit myself and my firm. So my name's Nicholas Scullion. I run an award-winning law firm. We've got offices in Glasgow, Hamilton, and in Edinburgh, also over Madrid. And this beautiful building here, this is our main office here in Hamilton. So we've been going for nearly 50 years, and we have about 50 members of staff that work with us. Now, as you can imagine, in a law firm, a lot of the stuff that we have is highly confidential. You know, even if it's somebody's will, if it's somebody's intimate information about their family breakup, you know, a contract dispute or, you know, a serious criminal allegation, everything we've got is very, very confidential. And we have a culture whereby we had what we thought was a very good IT system, you know, and good security. And, you know, our people were trained on the importance of good cyber health and keeping things sanitized. However, on Valentine's Day this year, we suffered a really horrific Valentine's Day massacre, whereby all of our data was encrypted, stolen, and taken from us. And what I want to do is I just want to talk just for 10 minutes about that so that you can learn from our experience. The most important thing for me during that, when I genuinely thought we would not survive, was that when the deal that we made with the universe was that if we did survive, we were going to talk about it. And I think it's really important to talk about cyber attacks because not many people do talk about them. They don't talk about the human cost, the emotional cost, the organizational failure, the embarrassment, the shame. There's so much goes on within a cyber attack. But people don't tend to tell you that they've suffered one until months and months and months later. And what I found very difficult was when we were going through ours, there was no one I could speak to that was able to offer me any sort of hope that we might survive. Yet there was a lot of people trying to sell me stuff and a lot of people trying to kind of help me understand that 60% of businesses and organizations don't survive the first 6 months. So straight away you're on the back foot. Meanwhile, it's a very dynamic experience. So that's why, as I said, what I'm doing today is sharing my experience to allow you to realize you can survive them, but you need to keep calm, stick together, and with the right team, it can be done. So, Paul, on to the next slide, please. So, within our business here, what happened was, I mean, when you suffer an attack at the very beginning, there's a load of stuff that needs to happen. You know, firstly, it's not like somebody breaking physically into a car where you see smashed glass and there's, you know, your handbag was there, now it's gone. The problem with a cyber attack is it's a process. And they could have been in your organization for quite some time. You also don't know what they've taken. You don't know what information has been compromised, and certainly in ours, it was a slow drip. So when our attack started, we were told we were under attack, but it didn't seem like an attack. It didn't feel like an attack. And for the first 3 days, we were working with the police, and I was like, this is the strangest attack that's ever happened because everything's working fine. But then in day 4, we absolutely knew we'd had an attack because we received a piece of ransomware. It told us who'd stolen all of our data, what they were going to do with it, and it was absolutely horrendous. And the reason it's extra horrendous is it paralyzes the organization. So all of the things that you and your team are doing now, that all of your service users are relying on you to do, those things still need to happen. But if you can imagine that you've got no access to any electronic data, how would you cope? If the phone rings and you can't tell who's on the phone because your phone systems are disabled and you're all diverting to mobiles, how do you install confidence in that person that's calling that actually you're going to be able to help them? When your members of staff are saying, right, where am I going tomorrow? And actually the calendar that you used for your planner has gone. And if you're like anything like us, you've been doing a really good job of digitizing everything so there's no physical copies. where do you go to for that data? When your staff begin to realize that when you've said the internet's down, but actually it's still down for 3 days, and they're like, well, is the internet really down? Is there something more? How much do you tell them? You know the people that you can say, listen, this is really what's happening, but don't worry, we're going to stumble on through it. And then the other people who will immediately be cancelling all their bank cards, looking for a new job, and then telling everybody that'll listen that the end of the world is nigh. So how do you keep the team together? What's the message? How do you control the story? And how can you do that in an environment where you have to inform the Information Commissioner within 3 days? The Information Commissioner will treat you as if you're the criminal because surely you must have cocked up somewhere for this to have happened, and you have to provide them with a list of information which is absolutely impossible to obtain because, as I said, you have no idea what's actually been compromised. So what happened to us was we immediately went to worst case scenario. We absolutely had a complete hissy fit and thought, my God, the entire business is going to go down. All these people are going to lose their jobs. You know, you immediately go on Google and you just think worst case scenario. And so we really had to really come together and then work on a plan. And on this slide here, what I'm showing you here is some information, which is the immediate steps that need to be taken. Yes, you've got to contact the ICO. You've got to, if you're lucky enough to have insurance, which we didn't, you know, you have to deal with them. You've also got the police. You'll be dealing with your existing IT suppliers, but let's just be real here. Your existing IT suppliers are going to be more interested in covering their arse because basically they know that someone's going to say there must be something that's been done wrong. So everybody is in a kind of a bit of a panic during the whole thing. Like us, we're a professionally regulated organisation. So with yourselves, you may have to contact the charity regulators. Plus, of course, you maybe have to make some very difficult conversations, you know, to those people who are on your board. And again, sometimes in the back of your mind, you may be worried that they're going to go, how did this happen? You're not going to know how it happens. So the key thing here is this: there's a lot of immediate action that has to be taken, but the most important thing for yourselves is to stay calm. And my best advice is to find somebody who's going to hold your hand during the process. Record everything, because although at the moment you're going through it, it might seem like there's a lot of time passes quickly. So my big thing here is on calmness, and my big focus is on making sure that the decision makers and the office holders on the organisations are calm. Right? If you were robbed in the street, there would be a lot of pastoral support to help you get over that robbery, but that sort of support just doesn't seem to be here for people suffering a cyber attack. You know, it's a very stressful time, and it's really easy to put your own needs to the side and focus on the needs of the organization, especially when, like us, you're dealing with vulnerable people. But the God's honest truth, you know, if you're not there and you're not in a good position yourself, you're not going to be any good to your team. You're not going to be able to make good decisions. You're not going to be able to help your service users. So you must make sure you focus on yourself. We have a great team in Scullion Law, and we also found some awesome partners. And the key thing for me is making sure you've got the right team, making sure you also get a bit of a breather from this and you get sleep, and you pace things out. There's not something that is going to be over within a couple of days or weeks or even months. As I said, this is a process. So steady, slow and steady wins the race, as they say. Next slide, Paul. For us in our business, you know, we had a management team, and some people in that team were like, don't you worry, let me know what you need to do and I'm going to crack on with it. Other people in that team were absolutely terrified of what might have gone wrong or what could happen. And I think that's why the most important thing for me is keeping that team together, you know. Critical, and I cannot go over this enough, is people are going to be blaming themselves. What was that email I opened last week? Oh, did I delete that password? What did I do? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You do not have a blame culture. You're never going to know at that stage in the early days what happened anyway. So don't start this whole he said, she said, you didn't. It's like, that is toxic. The key thing is you get the team together, you keep them together, and basically you make sure that those that need to be kept up to date are kept up to date. And those other people who just need to focus on the day-to-day to continue to deliver your services, they are getting enough to continue the services without having a worry about the end of the world is nigh. Believe me, there will be plenty of time for you to be thinking the end of the world is nigh. You do not need this at the beginning. It's all about positivity, breaking things down into day-to-day tasks. We broke things down with a morning meeting, what we can do in the morning, and then with an afternoon meeting, and we did again a summary of the afternoon. And if all that went well in the morning was we managed to get through the morning without anybody resigning and we had a cup of tea, we were clapping, because you need to have those moments of joy and celebration, because it is a tough gig, right? Critical thing is, how are people feeling? So we rate people, 10 is great, 1 is 0. Where are people at? That gives us a nice, easy way, of kind of understanding who needed a bit more support and care, and other people, again, who, if they were always fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Well, they're not fine. So your job as leaders to understand what is it we can do to move them to a place where they can at least manage. Some people just need time off. Some people just need to leave. Go away, come back in a few days, because you don't need them dramatizing and making everything worse. You need to allow people. I encourage people. I got them little bath kits and scented salts. I'm like, on you go and soak in the bath for 3 days. Come back when I'm ready to deal with you. Because at the end of the day, I've got to run this business, and there's 45 jobs online here. We've got to get through it. And again, encouraging open feedback. Right? You'd be amazed, how much pressure you put on yourself if you think you have to have all the answers. Newsflash, you don't. Your team will have amazing answers for their jobs in a way that you will not know, because it's been a few years since I've done all of the tasks in my business. And so therefore my knowledge is not as up to date as my team. So park that, encourage open feedback, and just allow yourselves to move forward. So as I said, these attacks can go on for months, right? You'll be amazed the resilience and the phenomenal contribution you'll get from your team. You'll also be amazed at the stress and the catastrophizing and all of the horrendous things that you will blame yourself for, and the Information Commissioner will blame you for, and other people will blame you for, and your service users. It's incredible. So you need to give yourself a wee pat on the back for just getting through it. But you need this strong plan. This may result in new systems, new partners, different ways of working, new equipment, everything. So it's a massive change. But do you know what? Change can be good. With our business, it was an opportunity for us to get a new system, because over the gone, it was also an opportunity for us to bring in some things which we'd been wanting to do, but we thought, how can we get everybody off of the day-to-day into the room to get this training done? Well, that's quite easy when you have nothing else to do. So there's always opportunities. And again, you just try and look for those opportunities. And, at the end of the day, they will appear. I mean, even the smallest thing, if you celebrate it well enough, can make people feel fantastic. So let's identify those changes, and let's get those projects that you've been sitting in the back burner. Let's get them in. It's a great time for a bit of team building work. Next slide, Paul. So again, what I want to do is I just wanted to share with you our experience of having had this attack. Our attack cost us hundreds of thousands of pounds. It put our business plan back by at least 6 months. It has been probably the most difficult period of my entire career. Of course, it didn't come along at the same time I was having quite significant problems with my personal life, with some members of my family. I also had a bereavement. There was a lot of stuff going on. And the people that I usually turn to for advice were just not able to give me advice during this time. So I had to find new people. But then again, here am I now talking about it. And we've launched a service because I passionately believe that the more we talk about surviving cyber attacks, the easier it'll be. And there's a lot of great knowledge for all of us. So if you're anyone you know is suffering a cyber attack, please get in contact with us. There's no cost for initial advice, and genuinely we'll teach you how to get through it, what we did badly, what we do next time, and please God, it never happens to any of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicholas. That was fantastic. We've now got Scott.
Thanks, Paul, and thank you, Nicholas. That was really interesting and a fantastic segue. So what I'm going to talk about briefly here is the NCSC Cyber Tabletop Exercise in a Box. For those that don't know, the National Cybersecurity Centre is a part of the UK government. They provide a variety of security services to the government, but they also create a whole variety of tools and resources that they make available for free. And in that spirit of helping the common good, we are also offering to deliver these exercises to you free of charge. Paul, could you click, please? So what is a tabletop exercise in this context? So it is essentially a guided conversation. You could think of it as being a bit like a therapy session or a bit like a role-playing game, depending on what metaphor you prefer. But we talk through the process of a cybersecurity scenario. Nicholas and his team made a lot of tough decisions under tremendous pressure. So this gives you an opportunity to think and talk about those decisions in a no pressure scenario. What would be the best thing for your particular organization? Who would you ask for help? Have you documented this in your policies and procedures? Do you think your staff know that this is the best thing to do, or would they go off and do something different? And that process of thinking and talking about it, firstly, it prepares you for having to make these decisions under pressure in a very real way. But it also can help you identify ways that you can improve things now to hopefully avoid being in that situation. So they can be really valuable. Paul, if you could please. And one more. No, there we go. It's okay. So, a bit more about what this really entails. So there are 20 different scenarios. These cover a whole variety of potential different cyber attacks. Some are quite specialized. Some apply to pretty much everybody. So, for example, getting a phishing email, which someone clicks on and then it leads to you have ransomware. That's something that all organizations are potentially facing. There are a whole variety of lengths of scenario. So there are some that are as short as 30 minutes, some as long as 4 hours. Most of the best ones are between 1 and 2 hours. So this is not a massive commitment of time that can produce some really great value. They are, although some are more technical than others, they are definitely not aimed primarily at a technical audience. Most of these scenarios are for a mixed audience where you'll have key people from the operational side of the organization, potentially members of the board, and some people from the technical side. And this is really important because cybersecurity is something that, of course, has a whole business impact. It isn't an IT problem, it's an everyone problem because the whole organization can be impacted. And everyone can contribute to it. Everyone can contribute to protecting the organization from it, and everyone contributes to fixing it if you do find yourself in that scenario. So it's really important to get the operational and IT and the stakeholders, board members and trustees and so on, all involved in this and understanding that they all have a part to play and they can all help each other. So it can be really good for breaking down some barriers between these organizations. As we go through this scenario, you'll score yourself as to how well prepared you feel that you are and the things that you want to improve and change and what your next step should be. So it comes with real outcomes for things that you want to do to improve your cybersecurity posture. As I mentioned, there's lots of scenarios and they cover all sorts of things, but in most of them, we will look at your plans. How well do your plans fit with what you feel is the best course of action? Do you have a plan for some steps? So, for example, something a lot of people don't really think about, but which Nicholas touched on, is communication. How do you tell your staff what's happening if all your IT is down? How much do you tell them? What do you tell the ICO and when? What do you tell the press if people start talking about you on the register? Do you make a statement? Do you give an interview? Who has the authority to do that and to decide what's in it? There are all sorts of details that a lot of people don't consider until they're in that scenario. This gives you a chance to think about this beforehand and start to build a plan around it. You'll find where there are gaps in your security measures and where there are things that you're doing right and things that maybe you could be doing better. And this will help you to prioritize them and you'll come out of it with a plan for the things you should focus on improving, the things that you're going to do first. But most importantly, have that mindset, as Gary talked about, improved and strengthened. By going through this decision-making process, you'll be very well equipped to make these decisions under pressure. But hopefully also, we can help you to not have to make those decisions under pressure, which is, of course, the best outcome for everybody, we hope. So please do reach out to myself and Paul if this is something you're interested in. We're both local in Scotland, so very easy to arrange meetings and so on. And just to stress again, this is something we're offering free of charge as part of being good digital citizens and helping the community generally raise their cybersecurity posture.
Thanks, Scott. Again, it's fantastic. We did this internally as a role play within the business, and it was so interesting to learn how the pressures come over to different parts of the business and who has to kind of step up in elements that you wouldn't think they would have responsibility for. So it is a great exercise to do. And then finally, but by no means least, we've got Kevin from Acumen to give us an overview of them and what we can be looking at from Acumen.
Thanks, Paul. So, as Paul said, my name's Kevin Robertson. I'm one of the co-founders here at Acumen Cyber. My background has predominantly been in this space for the last 15 years. So I was previously a Cisco security architect, a lot of FTSE 100 businesses, and also some time spent over in the Middle East, as well as sort of wider UK and Ireland and Europe. And along that kind of journey of seeing how organizations did things, pretty much decided that there must be a better way, and that's how the foundations of what Acumen is now was kind of formed. So I'll go into a little bit about what we do and how we're a little bit different from the norm as well. But first and foremost, if the slides will work, yeah, there we go. So, I mean, a little bit on the charity sector. So Paul obviously gave some stats at the start as well, which I think most people are probably aware. So every single year there's a cybersecurity breaches survey that's done. Paul referenced one of the stats from 2022. I've got a couple here from the more recent one, and the 2024 report I think is due out as well by the end of the year. So in terms of charities there compared to other businesses, almost a quarter of all charities have suffered some kind of breach or attack in the last 12 months. Now, the worrying part of that stat is when you look at those which are high income. So that, according to the government, only is $500,000 or more in annual income, which again is probably a lot of those on this call are going to fall into that bracket, and that figure rises all the way up to 56%. So comparatively to other businesses of a similar scale, that is much higher. And then when you start to look at some of the technical controls, there's a lot more listed in the report, but I've kind of called out a few from here. You know, only 55% of charity organizations even have something as simple as a password policy. So that could be, you know, that can obviously lead to a very, very easy route of compromise if you're using very weak and insecure passwords. Threat actors can effectively brute force their way in without, you know, much hindrance. And then if you look at sort of device security and device policies, so that could be as simple as antivirus, or as more complicated as things like conditional access applied and things like Intune usage, etc. You're then all the way down to 42%. And then if you look at, well, are we enforcing MFA across the entire organization, all the way down at 27%. So some of these kind of basic security controls, it seems like, are kind of lagging behind in the charity sector. And I can only speculate as to why that is, but I presume a lot of it is due to limited budget, limited time, limited focus on IT in general, but cybersecurity especially. So that's kind of where Acumen is looking to help. So what we do and what we specialize in is providing 24/7 security services. So that can be managed detection response services. So we monitor your environment, and then we'll respond to any threats, as well as a whole bunch of proactive security controls and measures in place, which again, I'll cover a couple of those in a second. To things like proactive security assessments on particular parts of your estate, and then also, unfortunately, should the worst happen, incident response engagements as well. So again, to daisy chain onto what the conversation has been today, if the worst happens and you need a technical recovery and technical analysis on that, that's where we come in, and we partner with a number of the biggest providers in the world from a technology point of view to do that, which again I'll cover in a second. Now, if you looked at the three parts of our business in terms of what makes us a little bit different, is we work with market-leading technology partners. Again, I've got a slide on who those are at a high level, but we use enterprise solutions to deliver services into mid-market and public sector organizations. It isn't a cheap and cheerful approach because there's maybe limited budget in the mid-market. It is, we have very much made the investment, and we have the relationships with these enterprise organizations to sort of provide that at a cost-effective price. We also have a bit of a unique service delivery model. And the reason why I call it unique is those who are familiar with how security operations centers work, especially, are probably familiar with things like the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type approach, familiar with those at the bottom of the rung, not necessarily being the most skilled engineers, etc. We flip that on its head completely, and we have a full stack engineer, quality over quantity type thing. Again, I've got a slide on that very quickly. And then we also have that single pane of glass. So that single pane of glass is our own internal platform that we have built that gives access to you, the customer, to get up-to-date information, you know, at any point in the day, and not just wait for either no contact or, you know, that quarterly report or quarterly analysis. So in terms of those technology partners we work with, so some of these names will be very familiar because they're in, you know, the IT industry almost all the time. So from an endpoint point of view, we work with vendors like CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, Elastic. We are certainly from CrowdStrike and Elastic point of view, some of the biggest partners in the UK for those technologies. On a network point of view, Fortinet, and then on security analytics, or traditionally called the SIEM platform, Elastic, and then from an email, web vulnerability management as well. You know, there's people on there listed. You're probably more familiar with those who work in the IT field. Waiting for the slide to catch up. So I mentioned as well about around that kind of uniqueness of the way that we operate. So if there is a security incident, for example, the person that opens that investigation is the one that closes it. Now, I'll caveat that by saying, naturally, if there's an incident that spans multiple days, that's 24 hours, etc., there will be some handover in there, don't get me wrong. But I guess what we're trying to articulate here is it's not a case of you get bobbed off with a junior engineer who may or may not know how to deal with that. It is a full stack engineer. The model is that they build the logic, they tune the logic, they are the ones that investigate it at 3 AM when it goes wrong. It's, again, you can look this up, but it's kind of dubbed the Netflix model. When you log into Netflix, you look at the most recently watched component at the top. The team that built that and the team that designed that from the ground up are the same team that operate it in production. And that's kind of how our model works. It's not, you've got one team doing this, one team doing that, et cetera, et cetera. It's all a kind of joint collaborative approach. And that kind of leads into the second sort of principle, which is around that develop, not operate our way to success. Now, what we mean by that is if there's a problem, we try and fix it and we try and make tomorrow better than yesterday. It's not a case of we'll just constantly throw, say, manpower at the problem or constantly, you know, harvest alerts and hope for the best. It's every single thing is looked at from a continuous improvement point of view. And that translates into a relationship with our customers and clients. We do not want you to you know, leave 1 year into the next and be in the same sort of posture, if that makes sense. Every single month, every single quarter, we are trying to make continuous improvements and keep you up to date with the latest sort of movements in the space. And that, again, is what would happen with that kind of named SOC client lead. So that is an individual from within Security Operations Center that would be aligned to your account and effectively becomes an extension of your team. It's not a technical account manager and old money. It's not a second salesperson for the price of two, for the price of one. It is actually an engineer that works day in, day out with this kind of stuff and effectively becomes your consistent point of contact throughout. So that when your, you know, finance server restarts at 3 AM on a Thursday, we know that because it happens every 3 AM at a Thursday, and Joe Bloggs, as your security engineer, will be able to give that context to the rest of the team. And they will work with you sort of hand in glove on the full journey and take you through whatever it is that you want to kind of achieve. And again, we'll go into what that kind of looks like in a second, but whether or not you're aligned into a framework, whether or not you're aligned to some kind of regulations or compliance or anything like that, again, we aren't going to say we'll fix the problem overnight because that's not likely. We will say, look, this is the roadmap for success, and this is what we want to do over the next 12, 24, 36 months, and that will be part of what those monthly check-ins are then become. Now, jumped ahead. So that single pane of glass I mentioned. So a whole bunch of kind of benefits to that. So we're going to give you this kind of unified visibility, and what we mean by that is, if you look at a kind of single vendor approach, for example, so Fortinet are very famous for having a product in every single space, and they prepend them all 40. So you have 40 EDR, 40 mail, 40 gate, etc., etc. Some of those products absolutely fantastic, and we leverage them. Some of them maybe not so much. So you kind of get drawn into that. Well, I want this single pane of glass approach, but I still want the best product and the best solution for each sort of vertical. So that's where we kind of come in. We are saying that you can make the best decisions in each area, but we will do all the hard part, and we will give you that single pane approach and integrate everything into one kind of place. And then from there, give you all those kind of insights that you might need and might want. And we'll also provide all of that core service information that we do within an inch of its life, so to speak. So every single investigation, every single incident that we work on, even if we don't raise it to you, if it's for example, a false positive, you'll be able to log in and get the metric of when did we detect it, when did we acknowledge it, and then when did we respond to it. And when we say respond to it, we mean do something meaningful. So suspend a user, quarantine an endpoint, block an IP address, whatever it is that needs to contain and stop that incident in its tracks. Every single client, you know, gets access to this. It's not something that we charge for. It's just part and parcel of the service. And the roadmap for that is you know, chock-a-block for the next couple of years. We are adding stuff to that continuously that, again, will hopefully help, improve the whole security journey for every single one of our clients. And again, couple of kind of screenshots what that looks like. The overview page, you can see all of your stats and metrics, again, live in real time. You can view all of your assets under management. If you click into these, you can see active vulnerabilities, you can see where your agents are installed and covered, etc. And then also we're going to be adding a whole bunch of other features related to Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. So again, all of that part and parcel of the service. And our SLAs or SLOs, so those metrics I mentioned earlier, we are pretty proud of them. In terms of industry standard, we are way ahead of that. So we do advertise those. Again, within your portal, you can see all of the stuff that's relevant to yourselves. And then these are more broader ones across all of our customers, all of our customer base over the last 90 days. You can see the one that we track the most is that bottom one there, that mean time to respond. So incident happens, and then how quickly do we stop it? And we're under that kind of 30-minute mark pretty consistently. Industry average is somewhere in the 168 hours, I think, from the latest sort of threat report from CrowdStrike that I read. But then there's also much more severe metrics there for certain industries, which can lead into days, weeks, months, where before they actually detect a threat actor potentially on their system. Now, in terms of what we do from a service point of view, kind of mentioned some of those, but a high level view. So one of the things we do is this kind of benchmarking assessment. So this can be a great starting point. And again, I'm going to cover a little bit on that in detail in a second, but that would be us actually coming in, looking at your state. It's a mixture of sort of questionnaire driven. We're going to ask about, certain things. We're going to look at things like framework alignment. So NIST CSF or NCSS, NCSC CEF are the two that we most commonly align with. But even answering all those questions and all those feedbacks, we can map those to things like ISO 27001, as well as Cyber Essentials and stuff like that as well. But a great starting point. Again, I could cover what that kind of looks like in a second. And then we've got other services such as, managed detection response for endpoints. So that is preventing the worst of the worst happening, things like ransomware attacks across your entire infrastructure. That's what that kind of service would look at doing. So that could be a managed, effectively EDR platform or endpoint detection response. Vulnerability management, but not at a point in time. So what I mean by that, it's not a monthly scan where we'll take what we can get. It's a continuous process. We're going to do it agent-based as much as possible so that you've got live, fresh vulnerability management information as quick as possible. Patch Tuesday hits for Microsoft. You will have a list of every single vulnerability you've got on each Windows device by the end of the day, because it's going to run basically continuously. And then also we've got a kind of dedicated detection response service for SaaS platforms. And when we say SaaS platforms, we mean most commonly, for example, Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, CRM solutions, finance tools, all of those things that your traditional on-prem security solutions just will never hit. We've got something, bespoke for that again, this is all modular and can be tailored for your environment. And then as well, our sort of threat intelligence solution. So we are a partner with an organization called Recorded Future. They're one of the biggest CTI providers globally, just bought by MasterCard, 2.6 or 2.8 billion. I can't recall exactly, but major acquisition for them. That's an investment we've made. We've made a multi-six-figure investment into that technology and into that solution. And by virtue of the fact you being a customer of ours, you get access to that at an absolute fraction of that cost. So again, another key thing. So lots to digest there. So where would we suggest people, if they are interested, where would they look to start? And again, I mentioned it before, but that kind of benchmark assessment. So at a high level, that could be things like a best practices audit. Could be things looking at Microsoft 365 specifically, on-prem Active Directory specifically, and then also all that accumulates into this kind of executive report, which will be tailored to the audience. So if we're delivering that, for example, to an IT director, CTO type character, it will be highly technical, as you would expect, but oftentimes as well, we get asked to put this together for at board level, perhaps to justify a business case to invest in XYZ. Again, we can tailor this to however you need. And highlighted the NIST CSF or the NIST cybersecurity framework on here. Realistically, we can tailor this to other frameworks too. In terms of how that might look, so here's a kind of overview of a couple of front pages of an assessment. It would be where do you rank within each kind of category, and then it would be specific, called out issues for each of those. So asset management, for example, you could be deficient on that because you don't have a tool that's automated, a tool that actually integrates. And then again, we can give you these fancy little radar charts, which are not only looking at what your score is today, but where do you want to get to in 6 months, in 12 months, and then long-term, long-term plan, long-term roadmap, where do you want to go? This obviously is a moving target and shifts, any framework as well is obviously going to be updated. Anyone who's 27001 certified will know that obviously that you're now under the cosh of doing the 2022 version. There was a bit of leniency for the last couple of years, but that's going to become enforceable very shortly. And any framework is the same. The slide's a little bit delayed. That's why we're at the end. So thanks very much.
Fab. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks, Gary, Nicholas, Scott, Kevin. I mean, it's really, really powerful information. I think what we wanted to cover today is that for you, the best solution is to be as prepared as possible up front and early. It's almost a case of what happens if, or what happens when and not if. So the more organised you can be, the better prepared you would be. So with loads of information, normally we'd love to sort of stop and do questions and whatever else, but we did want to get that and fit all of that information into this short hour. So if you do want any further information about any of the different services, the free NIST exercise in a box through Scott, if you want to find out more about Acumen and the services that Kevin and co provide, with Nicholas as well, with a consultation, with being able to talk to somebody who's actually survived and worked through that entire process. And if you want a really interesting book, Gary was on slide 1, but we didn't actually get to talk about it. He's got his book released, which I just bought on Amazon yesterday. So again, if you're looking for any more information around that, please do reach out to us and we can help, whether it's just a conversation right through to a full solution. Please feel to reach out. And again, thank you all for your time.